Yeah, you have to like still make sure you're interacting with people in your real life who care about you. You get a lot of really nice people online too, but you have to make sure that you can leave the online space and go somewhere nice.
It's like they say, go touch some grass.
Exactly, yeah.
Is anyone enjoying this? Is anyone enjoying this?
You have a YouTube channel called Political Psych with Abby. Can you tell our listeners about your channel?
So basically, I actually just finished a master's degree in political psychology. I handed in my last assignment a few days ago.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thanks. Before I even started doing the degree, when I was still finishing my undergrad, I was, already getting interested in this political psychology stuff, and I knew I was going to be starting a master's in it. And I've always been fairly politically active. And while researching a lot of stuff with political psychology and social psychology in general, I'm like, okay, this stuff is really interesting and really useful and has the potential to be really powerful. But most people don't know about it, right? Primarily, it's academics and occasionally certain people who work for like really high profile campaigns who know about it. And I'm like, well, what if people who are, activists and want to get into that sort of thing could know about it and use those techniques for smaller scale things or projects that might not have access to, fancy consultants and all that kind of thing. So that's sort of why I created the channel, and also super useful for just like staying motivated while doing a master's during a pandemic. It ended up being all online, which is not what it was supposed to be. So super useful for staying motivated because, I learned something cool and I get to tell people about it. And I get to be like, well, okay, even if I don't end up using this for work, I can use it for a video and then maybe someone else can use it to make the world better, Yeah, I mean, I'd like to be a bigger channel eventually. What I was going to say is the interesting thing is, so I don't really have much of like a video editing background. But I've always been pretty good at giving presentations. So my videos are just made like in Keynote with a little bit extra from Canva. And then I just record them like chronologically and just redo slides that I have to redo as I go along. So it's a lot of effort, but it's not actually a lot of like video editing technique there.
I really enjoyed your videos. They're really well made. Someone commented on one of them that, that your video quality is very high for such a small channel, which I definitely agree with.
Yeah, I've always liked like graphic design stuff, so I enjoy doing that a lot.
How did you get into... Okay, so actually, let me phrase that a different way. So your degree ended up being online, and of course you had to come up with another way to engage with the material. Why videos?
Well, I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos for a long time, especially politics and philosophy videos, the whole left tube thing, And so I was sort of inspired by some of that. And I was like, well, I mean, there's all these people who are doing really cool stuff with philosophy and even a bit with like sociology, but I don't see a lot of people applying it to like psychology. And if you look for psychology content on the internet, a lot of it is like mental health and clinical psychology stuff. And that stuff is super important. Don't get me wrong. But psychology is so much bigger than that as a discipline. And I wanted to talk about that.
Who are some of your favorite LeftTube creators?
I've gotten into We're in Hell pretty recently. I really like his stuff. Plus, the obvious ContraPoints, Philosophy Tube, H-Bomber Guy, Lindsay Ellis, all that kind of thing. If I kept going, it would be a long time. I've definitely fallen down rabbit holes where it's like, oh my God, I've been watching this stuff for 6 hours. I need to do something else. Especially because like I do a lot of needlepoint and graphic art and that kind of stuff. And I like to have videos on in the background. So sometimes I'll be like, wait a minute, I've done an entire canvas and watched 6 hours of YouTube videos, but I've gotten no work done today.
I mean, it happens to the best of us. What you said We're in Hell. What is that?
It's a YouTube channel. I only found it like a few months ago. I think the guy has like a sociology background and he's Canadian. He's done some really good videos. The one that actually got me into his channel and still one of my favorites is about cooking shows. And then he ties it into some like political stuff, but a lot of it is just about cooking shows. I'm a big foodie and I love to cook. So that I sort of clicked on it because of that. And then I'm like, wait a minute, this guy has some really interesting political insights too.
Nice. So, would you describe yourself as a left tube creator?
I guess I kind of would. I think that a lot of my content isn't necessarily so aimed at just people who are left wing quite as much. Usually people that are left of center in the American context, which is where I'm originally from, although I have lived in the UK for the past 5 years. I just moved back to the US.
Good time. Oh, well, actually, I guess it's kind of good timing on both.
I mean, I left the US in 2016, so
Very good timing.
yeah. I mean, obviously I've been back and forth, but what was I going to say? So, a lot of my content, probably, certain videos, people aren't going to necessarily notice my politics beyond like left of center in the US, if you get what I'm saying. Like, I'm not really trying to necessarily sell people on full, leftist ideologies. I'm more like, okay, this is a particular thing that's a problem. Let's talk about that specific thing. I'm not necessarily, and this is, I think, one of the reasons why I was drawn to more psychology and less philosophy or, political science. I'm not necessarily a person who thinks in like complete ideologies. So I tend to gravitate to more talking about specific things. And depending on what I talk about in that video, I end up coming off more or less left wing. Like, I have a video about the causes of political attitudes. And kind of from that one, you could probably think I'm just like left of center. But then I have one about the psychology of wealth and generosity. You're probably going to get the vibes that I'm a bit more left wing from that one.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one. It really really reminded me of Anand Giridharadas' work. You might enjoy his stuff. He goes on a lot of stuff, and he just talks about how when billionaires do philanthropy, they are buying PR, and we need to stop indulging them.
Did he go on John Oliver?
I think so.
Yes, I think I remember him now. Yes, I think I remember exactly who you're talking about. And yeah, I think that video is sort of in that vein.
Yeah, I really think so too. I really enjoyed it. Which one of your videos that you made is your favorite?
It's hard to say, but I think one that I'm really, really proud of and that I wish was getting, more attention compared to my other videos is my one about fixing climate change using psychology.
Oh, that one was so good.
Yeah, I mean, technique-wise, I think it's, upper tier for me in terms of how well it's made, but I also just think it's not that any of the topics I talk about are unimportant, but that it is, kind of the most important issue of our time. So I think, especially in terms of like empowering activists, that is some of the most important work I've ever done. If people watch one of my videos, that would be the one I would want them to watch.
I will definitely link that in the show notes. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
In general, who do you like to watch? Left tube or no?
On YouTube. Honestly, I watch Binging with Babish a lot. I watch cooking content. And I watch like fashion content and history content. I'm really into decorative art. If you bring me to the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, you have to pry me out with a crowbar. I'm that kind of person. So, generally, if I'm not watching political content, I'm watching something about something really beautiful or enjoyable, be it, fashion or jewelry or food or that kind of thing.
Aesthetic stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I sort of think of myself as a cozy hedonist. I'm not going out and partying all the time, but I like to make and have nice things.
I totally get that. I did want to ask you a little bit about moving to England.
Yeah. So I don't give out a ton of detail, but I was actually in Scotland for my undergrad, and then I was in England for my master's.
Culture shock. Did you experience that when you moved to Scotland?
A little bit, although I think a lot of it was right that like I was 18 and I was living away from home for the first time. So I think a lot of people experience that when they go to college. It's just that, there was a 5-hour time difference and I was, a foreigner, that sort of thing. It's interesting. I sort of think that it's almost nice being in a foreign country, especially one where, you already speak the language, so there's not that much of a barrier, because you can be weird because you're foreign instead of being weird because you're just weird.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, no, so that can be really nice. Yeah, and I absolutely loved living there. Like, I grew up in the suburbs in the US, and it was so nice living in like a very compact town where I could walk everywhere. So that was really nice. And I mean, the politics are really different. So like, the idea that, so I come from a pretty liberal town in the US, but like until Trump got elected, most people were, they weren't radical at all. You get what I'm saying? Like they were very, very mainstream,
Mm-hmm.
and so like the culture shock there politically was like people who are that it wasn't uncommon for people to just refer to themselves as a socialist or something,
Oh my God,
because
yeah.
that's a lot more that's sort of more common in the UK, right? Because their political spectrum is their Overton window is different than ours, right?
Mm-hmm.
And seeing what was possible, right? Like obviously there are a lot of flaws in British politics and British society, and I'm not going to say that they're like better than us, and the whole like British people are classier than Americans is complete nonsense. um yeah,
Agreed.
but like using universal health care there, I'm like, my God, they're not some crazy futuristic utopia, but you can just go to the doctor. And I've always had pretty good health insurance here. I've never had to go without medical care, but just being able to go and not fill out forms and know that, if I didn't have my documents on me, or if I didn't have if I didn't have money or whatever, I would still be able to get care. I was like, wait a minute, this isn't impossible. We should have this.
You know what really blew my mind? So I went to Guatemala and I got dysentery, as one does in countries with, where the water infrastructure is struggling that much. So I go to the closest hospital in Guatemala, which is a public hospital. We're in a really rural area. The infrastructure in general is just terrible. I wait for a while. Granted, like this is a very underprivileged country. Like the conditions of the hospital are not great. They're actually pretty bad. But I walk out and I, go to the receptionist and I say, how much does it cost? She says nothing. She says it costs nothing. I'm like, wait, so I'm in Guatemala, like a really impoverished country in a really impoverished region of the world for, various political reasons we don't need to get into, but has a lot to do with the CIA. And like, they're not charging me for healthcare. Why am I paying for it in the US?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's nuts. Like, I mean, I had to pay for healthcare as part of my visa to the UK. And let me tell you about the visa process. It makes you very anti-nationalist. But I don't know if you've ever applied for a visa before, but it's a whole thing. You pay a fee as part of the visa to be on the NHS. And that fee is actually, I think, something that they haven't always had. I'm not a complete expert on it. And there are people who think that they shouldn't even have that fee. And that fee, the fee I paid for 4 years was equivalent to a few months of being on my mother's health plan in the US.
Yeah, I mean, it honestly is insane. I don't know. Like, I just like, even in an area of the world where the hospitals clearly badly need money, they don't think it's fair to charge people for basic medical care. I'm gonna go on a tear.
Okay, it's a reasonable thing to be mad about. I was talking to my boyfriend, and he turned to me one day and he's like, Abby, if we ever have kids, we should move back to England to do it.
I live in a very high cost of living area in the US, and of course I don't have to, but I could move to a cheaper area of the US, but no matter where you go, healthcare can bankrupt you. Childcare is, absurdly expensive. What advice would you give to someone who wants to make videos like you, but isn't sure where to start?
Jump into it. You can figure it out as you go to some extent. Do write a script. That probably is helpful, at least if you're making the same style of videos that I'm making. And do your research, obviously. And in terms of like promoting it and that sort of thing, one thing I've noticed is, so the two methods of promotion that I use are Instagram and Reddit. And it took me a long time to decide to get Reddit for the YouTube account because I just don't usually use Reddit. I didn't grow up using Reddit. I'm not a big social media person. Before the pandemic, I was a big interacting with people in real life person, and I'd like to be again. What I was going to say is Reddit is so much better for engagement than Instagram is. and not just like the bread tube subreddits and all that, just like anything that is at all relevant to your video, like post it on that subreddit. Like if you reference a TV show in your video, even if it's just like a still joke for a second, put that still up on the subreddit and comment the link to your video down below. The best engagement like I got out of a single post was posting on Reddit about like a joke, a reference I made to Archer in my wealth and generosity video, and that got me so much engagement for that video. So Reddit isn't always friendly. I have had people be incredibly awful to me on Reddit, but it is so good for engagement. Like my channel, I mean, I'm still pretty small, but my channel has been growing much faster since I started using Reddit a lot. You get some engagement off of Instagram, but at this point, that's practically just like a diary of my channel that some of my subscribers also look at. But that was good when I was like still doing my masters, because I could post like summaries of all my readings there, and people seemed to like that. And plus, that was like another way to communicate what I was passionate about, even if they don't always click on the videos, because the click-through rate on Instagram is not good. It's much better on Reddit.
Yeah, Reddit's got a lot of short form content, but there's still a lot of people on there who are interested in long form content and will actually watch at least a good portion of your videos.
Yeah, much better watch times off Reddit too. I think because people are probably looking through Reddit when they have more time than when they are looking through Instagram as well.
Mm-hmm.
I will definitely say though that people have been way meaner to me on Reddit than on Instagram.
Oh, that's a bummer. What did people say?
Can I swear on this?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, someone called me a cunt.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, that's probably one of the worst ones. And they did it in a private message, so it's just like, what the hell? Yeah, no, definitely the worst for me has been like, so my most popular and most recent video to date is talking about like the political compass, the way that it is and isn't related to the actual social science. And I end up being pretty negative about politicalcompass.org and the way Political Compass memes work. And that has definitely, that video, interestingly, because, it's the least politically consequential of my videos, right? Because it's primarily about internet culture and like political theory rather than very practical things, right? So it's not, my most, this is this political issue and what we should do about it type video. But the Political Compass memes community is not super nice all the time. Like, some people have been fine to me and nice, but like, people are weird. And they're weird if you're a woman. Also, that's definitely a thing.
Oh yeah.
I think they were probably doing it as a joke, but like, I made some post and someone just commented "woman" under it, and I'm like, what the hell?
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's so weird. But it's whatever. Because I think that also, advice for people making a YouTube channel, like if you're making it and you're going to get like some hate comments for it, which honestly, even if you're doing something pretty innocuous, you probably will, you got to make sure that like you have a good support system in your life of like people who will listen to you gripe about it and complain about it. Because you got to talk about it. If you hold it all in, it's like not healthy.
Yeah, I don't know if she mentioned this. Our producer has a channel about like biotechnology, and like she's also a woman, so people will make like their shitty comments, and she'll just come to me and be like, like some guy who doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about made another comment about how I'm wrong and he's wrong actually. So
yeah, I get that all the time. And the thing is, I grew up around like a ton of really, really smart people. And so I never assume that I'm the smartest person in the room, right? So I'm always like, wait a minute, what if they're right? And I need to take down this video. And then I check my notes and I'm like, no, they're wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to be able to defend your viewpoint and to really make sure that you've got a solid case. So maybe that's the advantage of being a woman. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's this like whole thing where people are always like, oh, women just need to be more like real confident and assertive and whatever. And I'm like, to some extent that's true, but to some extent men need to like be willing to doubt themselves. You know, I read this really interesting article. I can't remember where it was, but a while ago, about basically how like bluster and overconfidence is really rewarded in the workplace, and that rewards men, but it also leads to like worse outcomes overall because it just rewards people who have no idea what they're talking about but act like they do.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. Abby, are there any questions that you were hoping I would ask that I haven't?
Oh, I was going to talk a little bit about what my next video is going to be.
Oh, yeah. I would love
Yeah,
to.
so my next video is going to be about genopolitics. So that's the like genetic factors that underlie people's political actions, attitudes, behaviors, all that kind of thing. So I talked a little bit in one of my previous videos about the like causes of political attitudes, but a lot of those underlying causes are themselves caused by genetic factors, and I didn't really get a chance to cover that in that video, so I want to expand on that and talk more about the genetics, which is going to be really interesting. I think it's a bit more, you know, hard science heavy than some of my previous videos, but fortunately, a lot of it is just like, okay, this is what a twin study is, and I feel like I can probably get that right. Yeah. And of course, I mean, I did my undergrad in psychology, so I had to do a lot of, you know, neuroscience-y stuff for that. Although I was always better at the social psychology end of things.
Some of our listeners might not really understand the difference between psychology and social psychology. Would you mind explaining it?
Yeah, sure. So social psychology is a branch of psychology. So it's like a type of psychology. There's a lot of different types of psychology. So social psychology is the branch that deals with specifically the interactions between individuals and groups, and those can be groups as small as, you know, 2 or 3 people, or as big as a whole country. If you're dealing with how a person relates to the social world around them, that's social psychology. So political psychology primarily falls under that umbrella.
Nice. Okay, that is very interesting. I also wasn't 100% clear on that, to be honest. So, by some of our listeners, I meant some of our listeners, but also me a little bit.
Oh, it's okay. That's okay.
Abby, where can our listeners follow you?
So the YouTube channel is the main thing, and that's political psychology, political psych with Abby. Just type that into YouTube. You'll probably get me. And then my Instagram is at political psych with Abby. So my Reddit is political-psych-Abby. Oh yeah, if you do subscribe to my channel, please ring the bell. YouTube doesn't always tell you when I have new content.
Mm-hmm.
It's whatever. It's like, I'd like to make money off of it someday, but that's not really my goal. I mostly just want people to see it, right? Especially because a lot of political psychology stuff, if it's only in the hands of the powerful, that's actually kind of dangerous. It can be, you know, it can be used to manipulate people, right? I went to this careers event in Washington, D.C., right, from my university. But then there was this guy from, I think, the Department of Defense. And he just looks me dead in the eyes and says, "Are you interested in psychological warfare?" Yeah, and I said, interested, yes. Willing to do, I don't think so. Oh, in terms of, like, misuses of political psychology stuff, I would really highly recommend Jill Lepore's book, If Then, which is about the Simulmatics Corporation. So it's this really interesting stuff about, like, either the late 50s or the early 60s, about, like, simulating human behavior using computers. And a lot of that is pretty relevant to the early history of political psychology, trying to, you know, predict human behavior and be more scientific about it. Although they were really bad about it in that era. You know, most people who are serious about it will be like, okay, you know, this works under these conditions and these are the limitations of the research and whatever. You know, if anyone ever tells you that their social psychology research applies in every single instance and they haven't tested every single instance, that's a little shady. You know, I mean, you can say this will probably apply fairly universally. But yeah, and I mean, there's still an issue with, in psychology in general, including in social psychology, you know, the fact that most of the data is gathered from what's called weird settings. So that's white, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. So that's basically, you know, places, and even within, you know, societies that are considered like that, people who have more privilege are more likely to be the subject of a lot of psychology research, because a lot of it is just conducted on psychology students, right? So that can be a real issue in political psychology if you're trying to apply concepts to people who might not have as much education or information, or people in other settings around the world. So that's a limitation. But earlier on, oh my God, like in this If Then book, talking about the Simulmatics Corporation, they were really, really not doing a good job of including diverse populations. I mean, they were trying to simulate election data for African American people in the South using a sample of like 30 African American people in Harlem.
Oh, jeez.
I think. And so that's not how that works. That sort of thing doesn't happen as much anymore. I want to clarify that. But it is, the history of it is really interesting.